these guys and it would have been pretty phenomenal, but to have 3 of them at the same time, my head is going to like explode or something. So it's great, and I think most of you may know already what all of you do, but should we just do a very quick introduction round, like maybe a quick 30-second thing on what you do within the company and what your startup does?
Yes, so I'm Arvid, I'm one of the co-founders of Vint, and we want to enable personal workouts for everyone. And instead of just limiting yourself to gyms and classical personal trainers, we want to connect you with like very passionate athletes that help you excel in different sports and things like that.
And you actually went to Uppsala, right? Did I get that right? Or you?
Yes, I studied engineering physics and business economy.
Awesome. So a proper product of Uppsala. That's all we love. That deserves a round of applause just for that. Come on, yeah. So, okay, then we have Siavash from Tictail.
I'm Siavash. I did not study at Uppsala. Sorry to disappoint you all.
Just kidding, just kidding.
That's a great start. So, I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders of Tictail, a company here, or not here, but in Stockholm, that allows anybody to start a free online store. We launched about 2 years ago, and now we have about 50,000 online stores.
Awesome. And you just closed a whopping $7 million A round?
A little bit more.
A little bit more. So if you need beers tonight, that's the guy to go to. So Carl from Freespee.
Yes, so I happen to live in Uppsala even, so I win over these 2 guys on that. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Freespee, and Freespee, what we do, we want to make spoken conversations between consumers and brands as brilliant and as simple as the online web shop experience you have when you use a tool like Tictail. And the reason for us doing that is because we can all use our mouth and we can text, but in the online ecosystem, anything that is similar to a phone call is invisible. So as soon as I choose to talk to someone, I disappear from the radar. So we choose to connect these offline events to internet and create data out of that, and later on create better user journeys.
It's great. And I actually forgot to say before, if any of you have questions during this, because I always go to events and these kind of things happen and you can't really kind of fit in the question at the right time, just tweet it with the hashtag Uppsala Tech and I'll check it and I'll read out your questions. So it's a great opportunity to ask some pretty awesome people whatever you want to ask them, within reason. So I'm going to get straight into the money stuff because you guys have raised a phenomenal amount of funding so far. And I want to sort of talk a little bit about your strategy actually, because I think a lot of startups perhaps when they go into the funding kind of remit, they don't realise there's actually a lot of ways you can approach fundraising. There's not one textbook way you can do it. And I'm just kind of curious to hear, was there any kind of specific strategies you guys used that actually worked well? Was there any kind of tips you used? Like, in terms of, so for example, did you contact lots of investors or not so many? Did you focus on the product doing the speaking for itself? What kind of strategies did you use to kind of, to ultimately get you a lot of success fundraising?
Yeah, so the number one advice I have is like use your contacts, because getting good intros is invaluable when you want to raise money.
I can continue on that. So when we started Tictail, we didn't have any VC contacts. That was out of our pay level. But we knew a lot of great people at a lot of great companies, and we knew that they could help us get in touch with them. So one of the first things we did was to establish an advisory board and invite those people in, and in return promise them some things. But they made sure that we got in touch with the right people, and that allowed us to raise a seed round at least.
That's awesome. And Carl?
Yeah, I can add to that. So we didn't have a lot of contacts either. But I would even argue that maybe it's not necessary that you have contacts. One tip that I would advise you all on is that focus not on the product when you try to explain your company. Focus on the problem you're solving. If you can explain to people what problem you are solving and how big that problem is for the world, you will find contacts. Then how you solve it, that's less relevant. Define the problem.
Because you can't, I think in terms of the kind of breakdown of your seed rounds for all of you, I think Carl, it was in Venture, am I right, over in Finland? And I think for you, Siavash, was Borderton from London. And then Arvid, I'm trying to now remember, you said it was DN Capital in London, and you had Creandum in the round, which is Swedish. They're all VCs. I think some of you had some angels in that round, I think 2 of you. Was there any kind, all of you had angels in that round. Okay, so my question was going to be, what's the difference between pitching to a VC and an angel? So I think a lot of kind of startups that haven't started that process perhaps don't know even that difference, that VCs are big organisations with funds and angels are essentially individuals with money looking to invest personally most of the time. Did you kind of approach those people differently? Did you look to target VCs specifically for any reason? Siavash is nodding. So.
Yeah, I can start out. So we wanted initially to have only one VC firm because we want to keep the board as lean as possible at that early stage. But to give you some background, we have one angel investor, is Klaus Holmquist. I don't know if you know about him, but Klaus is practically a firm on his own. He has done so many investments like Skype, Facebook, Spotify, King, and so on. So he heard that we were raising money. He attached himself. And when Klaus comes in and says he's interested, you don't say, oh, but you're an angel. We only wanted VCs. So that's how we ended up with both of them.
Interesting. Any other experiences on that front?
Yeah, we kind of went the other way around. We had very good contacts at Creandum, and both Magnus and Leo had worked with them previously, so we knew that they were good to have involved, not just for the money, but for contacts and things like that. And since we knew that we were going to launch in the US pretty quickly, we needed like some good networking people there. So we decided to like do a round with VC money, but also a lot of angels in the US.
Fantastic. And Carl, anything to add from your side?
Yeah, not really. We met with, so when we raised our first round back in late 2009, we met with Creandum and similar. There weren't too many on the map at that time, but they all turned us down. So we went abroad and managed to convince them pretty quickly.
It's interesting you say about abroad, because I mean, do you think it's hard to raise money in Sweden?
I wouldn't say, yeah, we didn't manage to do it, but we managed to raise outside Sweden, and that wasn't, I would say we have been lucky so far in being able to find good investors that believe in us as a team. But yeah, it requires some hard work. It does, and some traction in any of the KPIs you believe are relevant. Hard. I would say there is plenty of money out there. You need to be able to convince people that you are the right person and you have the right team for those money.
I can add to that.
Oh yeah, go for it.
In the end, VCs are people, and they tend to talk a lot with each other. When we started raising money in Sweden, none of the Swedish VCs wanted to invest in Tictail until we got traction from abroad, and suddenly everybody was interested. So if you can find somebody abroad, I'm sure you can bring on the Swedes as well.
You were lucky with Borderton. I mean, they love Sweden. Borderton has sort of seemed to be one of these VCs based in London who do a lot of investments in Sweden.
No comment.
Good job, Arvid.
Yeah, but I think that like European investors have been moving actively towards Stockholm. A lot of them that we talk to see that there is like super high quality of the companies that come out of Stockholm. So it's, I think it's kind of natural that they're looking to invest in Sweden or in like the Scandinavians altogether.
Good. So I'm gonna switch to kind of going a little bit back in time actually, because we talked about the money stuff. But like before then, I mean, and actually to get the money, you kind of need some customers, right, to convince investors to actually put the money in you. And I think the hardest thing for a lot of startups is actually the very early customers. We're talking to the first 500 to 1,000 customers, which is very different to when you're scaling and you have money and you can spend money on advertising and so on. Was there anything you guys did that was sort of particularly interesting in how you got those initial customers on board when you didn't particularly have a lot of money to actually do that with?
I don't think it's rocket science. I mean, if you know, I come back to the problem. If you know the pain you are solving for your customer, you can get customers. In our case, it was very old, like we're B2B software, so it's old traditional outbound sales. We contacted companies, pitched our software, and they liked it, so they bought it. Inbound is maybe more like it's a different play, and we have just started to do that. I guess like for Vint and Tictail, it's another story. But in our case, it was pure hard traditional sales work in the beginning.
You kind of have an advantage there. I guess with B2B, you two guys have a lot more of a disadvantage with the marketplace model, which I know that the pain of myself, having started one myself, that you have the chicken and egg, right? You have two consumer groups, essentially. I think, yeah, actually both of you are both targeting consumers on both sides of that chicken and egg. You know, Arvid, you have instructors and you have end users. Siavash, you have the sellers who want to create shops and the customers wanting to buy from those shops. So, how did you guys solve that sort of chicken and egg marketplace model dilemma? Is there anything you did that kind of accelerated that at all?
So, starting a marketplace from scratch, especially when you have two parts that you need to balance all the time, is super, super difficult. And I've worked at Blocket before, I know. Like, I saw tons of competitors being crushed all the time, trying to replicate the exact same thing. So when we started Tictail, we started with one site. We started with merchants, people who wants to start a store, and we provide them with the service to do it, and it's absolutely free. So they have tons of reasons to start a store, and once we have, like now, 50,000 stores, we have that part covered. Now we can switch focus to emphasize on consumers, make sure that all of these stores get consumers, and that consumers find stores across Tictail as a platform.
So you focused on a pretty fantastic product and used kind of a freemium type way to incentivize people to come first, and then started to go with the kind of extras, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I'm sure that model can be replicated in tons of different ways.
And Arvid, did you find the same thing with Vint?
Yeah, I think we did something similar at least. We tried to partner up with small, what do you say, like private studios and things like that to also make sure that we have like an initial supply for our consumers, because I think that's really the key. If you don't have that, then you don't have anything. So.
Cool, good tips, I think. By the way, keep tweeting. I haven't had any questions through. I think I just checked and nobody's asking anything. So if anyone wants to ask something, now is your chance to ask that amazing question that's going to change your life. So my next thing was going to be more about the team, because I actually asked this at the last UppStart. We had some VCs on stage. We had North Zone, Creandum, and no, not Creandum. It'd be nice to have Creandum, but we had North Zone, Moore, and Gulesprong on stage. And I asked them about team, and I kind of was getting at, is it important? And the resounding answer was yes. It's pretty much the most important thing they look at in early stage stuff. So it'd be interesting to hear from an entrepreneur's side, you know, because a lot of startups struggle with team stuff. I mean, you think it's easy, and even once you've got funding, I put my hand up for that as well, actually, that when we got seed funded, we thought it'd be incredibly easy to find talent, and we were based in London, and, you know, it wasn't easy, but that's an understatement. And there's two sides of this, really. You've got the co-founding team, you know, your co-founding partners, and then you've got the hires after that. Like, did you find that particularly difficult? And how did you meet your co-founders?
So we basically met through Leo, one of our co-founders. He's kind of the origin for Vint. But I also think that like the co-founding team is super important. Both that you work together well, but also that you like connect on a social level, because you're gonna spend a lot of time together, and like a lot of things it's going to be hard, and you really need to be able to trust each other to make sure that everybody's doing what they should be doing and things like that. So,
because at Vint, you guys have a pretty strong founding team. I think it's probably fair to say that was a major factor of how you managed to close such a big initial seed round. And it's interesting, I mean, when you've got such a strong team like that, did you find it was hard to get everyone to kind of say, okay, we're going to do this? I mean, everyone was from pretty strong backgrounds. It was like your CTO was Spotify, I believe, and from some pretty big names. I mean, was it hard to say, okay, let's do this, let's do a startup, quit your awesome jobs?
Well, for us, it really wasn't that big of a deal because the timing was perfect for all of us. I was just rounding out my previous gig. Magnus was consulting at the time at Tictail, so he's still in. And Leo was off as well, and Louise was just in the process of leaving her company. So for us, it went extremely fast. I think we started talking in like April and started the company in July last year. So everything went very, very fast because we knew we had a great team. We had a very clear vision of what we wanted to do. So for us, it just made sense to go for it.
And Siavash, I read some story somewhere that you met Carl, your co-founder, because you checked out the Tictail website and then were sort of nerdy enough to look at the source code, I think it's fair to say, and then found like a job ad hidden in the source code. Is that a true story? Did I read that correctly?
That's
that
great.
PR?
No, that's great. I didn't know the other 3 co-founders that I started with. They had an idea. They had been working with clunky e-commerce tools for a long time, and like, we have to change this. So, and starting a company today, especially if you're from Sweden, you're questioning, like, should we start this company in Sweden, or should we do it in San Francisco, where all the other cool tech companies are? So they built a simple website and a video about themselves, and they left for San Francisco. And at that time, I came in, I saw the video, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. They want to change e-commerce, so do I. But that kind of faded away, and I was doing another project on the side, and I needed a font for that logotype. And top of mind in great design was still Tictail.com. So I went back, looked at the source code to find the font, then I found an HTML comment in the code instead that was like, are you an entrepreneurial Python developer? Get in touch. And at that point in time, they were looking for another technical co-founder to balance out the team so that we could become 2 designers, 2 developers. And that became the core of our team moving forward.
I think that's an awesome story. I think it's such a cool way to validate someone is that interested that they've actually gone and checked out the product before. So, I mean, Carl, did you find similar things? How did you meet your co-founder? How did you form that team?
So we worked together at the company before we started Freespee, and that's where we met as well. And I would say the first 10 people are not that super complicated because you pick them from your friends that you know are like brilliant, your brilliant friends. But then after that, it starts to become difficult because then number 11 has to leave a well-paid job and join your risky startup. And why should he or she do that? That's when it starts to become complicated, and it is complicated every single day after number 11. We spend very much time on finding good talent. And because it's absolutely, it's like the VCs say, it's the most important thing you have, your team, and because so we have, for example, we have been in dips where things have had customers. One of our biggest customers went bankrupt. That's not a nice day at work. But then if you know, and we had to change go-to-market model because of that. But if you have the right team, you can do that. And the investors believe in you. So they give you the time to change. So that's why the team is so important. You have to have buy-in from everyone.
Yeah, makes sense. So we had a question, woohoo! So who's Le Shops? There, yeah. So it's Kurt. So he was asking about names and presumably branding in general, and asked whether your name or... Oh, no, sorry, he wasn't asking about names at all. I just made your question up completely. He actually was asking about ideas. He said, was your idea the same from the beginning? And it's a good question. I guess what he's getting at is, you know, did you pivot, did you adapt, did you change your original concept much?
Well, for us, it stayed kind of the same, actually. And that's kind of a funny story as well, because the first time I met Louise was when she was about to pitch this idea to me, to try to get me to join the team. And it turned out that what she was pitching was more or less the exact same idea that me and another friend had like pitched at a hackathon like 2 years earlier. So for us, that felt like pretty good match.
Around our idea, tons of things changed around the core of it, but the core was the same. The core idea was allow anyone, everywhere in the world, to start an online store. But then around that, there are tons of details. At some time, we wanted to be Amazon. We want to have our own store. And you realize you need to cut the unimportant things off and focus at the core. And we realized that the core actually was only that part. And that's what we went for.
So you took more and more stuff out as you grew and sort of focused on one thing, you'd say?
I think the first time I met my co-founders, they had a 2-hour pitch of what the idea was. So one of the first things we did was, what is it not? Like, start cutting things off.
That's great. So I don't know, there's some famous quote, it's not what you do, it's what you don't do, right? I really believe in that. Yeah, Carl? Did you change anything? Did you always have the same concept for Freespee?
No, we have been around for about 5 years now. So I would say the idea hasn't really changed, but how we communicate it has changed. We learn. I would say we change our message to the market probably almost every 6 months. Small words only, but those words makes a big difference when the listener try to understand what we do.
Yeah. So where's Pat? Ahern, over there. So great question from Pat on Twitter, and keep them coming. #Uppsala Tech, and I'll read them out. So he asked, when raising capital, how did you decide the worth of your company? Which is a really good question. I've asked this question so many times when we're raising a seed round. How do you establish a valuation when you're a startup? You don't really have many customers. Is it the team? How do you put value on the team? How did you guys figure that valuation issue out?
Well, I think this is a very good question, because to me it's not about how much your company is worth when you're raising like a seed round. Because one of the really important lessons that you have to do is like figure out what do you need the money for, because you're not raising money just for fun. I mean, you're raising it for something specific. So for us, we raised the money to like launch in Stockholm and then one more city in the US, and we knew what we had to do, and then like the discussion became more about like how much equity can we give up, because we know what kind of money we need for this rollout strategy. So I think that's the key part, just understanding how much you actually need.
So you started with how much you need, and then you essentially said how little equity could we give away?
It's actually pretty similar to how we did it. The problem was, the first time we had no idea how much money we needed. So we started really low, and then we met someone, and they're like, oh, you need to raise more money. All right, can we have a high valuation than this? Like, yeah, go ahead, raise it. And then we kept meeting people after people after people who've done this tons of times. Like, guys, you need to raise more money. You're gonna need it, and you don't want to go like halfway and realize you don't have enough money. So we raised it like to a limit we thought was impossible, and then we started raising money, and suddenly we had 3 VCs competing, and then they raised it for us. So
that's awesome. And finally, Carl, how about you? How did you set the valuation initially when venture put money in, for example?
Yeah, so I would say the first round is the most difficult round, because you don't have so much metrics to go on. So we were similar to my friends here. Like we thought we knew how much money we need, and then we we had a mental picture of how much we are ready to be diluted to that money. And I'm not on the VC side, so maybe I shouldn't say this, but I mean, there is, now I've been around for 5 years, and I would tend to say that there is a rule here that in many rounds you have to accept 20% dilution. And then make sure you get a lot of money for that.
Yeah. I think one of our investors said at our seed round, your startup is only worth as much as people are willing to pay for it, which is kind of true. I mean, you really have nothing else to go on. If you can get a higher valuation, good for you, go and get it. So I think we probably have to wrap things up there, so we're going to take a break and do some more mingling. Unless anyone has a question, if you stick your hand up now, maybe we could ask any questions. Can't see any hands. We covered absolutely everything. So that's great. But thank you so much for coming. I hope it's been valuable. I certainly learned tons of stuff. So thank you for coming and spending the time. And a round of applause, please, for the 3 entrepreneurs.
Thank you.